going to kick off part 2 of our Marantz 2250B restoration. If you'll remember, in the last video we figured out this thing had a bad power supply switch. Probably needs rebiasing, needs a good tune-up, and I found a couple capacitors that are questionable. So I'm going to dig into this thing a little bit and see what else is next on the list. So one thing I did is I just slid the faceplate back on, just so I know what buttons I'm pushing per se. And I notice spinning around here to the back. I hook my speaker wires up, which go up here to my dummy load and speaker setup that I've got. And I also plugged a cable into the back here, into the aux, which comes over here to my lovely little iPod Nano. And I went to where the power switch is at, and I basically wired those two, the red and the orange wire, together. So now the on and off switch is not right there. It is down at my foot. But that's just temporarily until this part comes in. It'll keep me moving along and let me service this thing while we wait on the part. So by the time it comes in, hopefully we've got everything else ready to go and ready to get this thing back to the customer. But I'm going to try just a thing here, one or two things. And as I hook it up and turn it on, we'll notice we're set on aux. Balance is in the middle. I've got the volume fairly low right now. But I noticed I've got music playing, but I'm not hearing anything. So I noticed here, I turned the volume up a little bit, about midway. And I noticed on this main switch, as I push it, I hear noise out of the speakers. But unlike the remote switch here that clicks in and out, listen to this. One second here. Switches are not operating properly. Hear how that clicks? Not doing it. And as I do this one, I can hear noise up there in the speaker. So not only do we have a bad power switch, we've also got some bad speaker switches. Hopefully cleaning will do it. I'll let you know here in just a second. Let me show you what just a little bit of deaux it did for these switches. The first one and the second one. Whereas before they wouldn't click at all, they wouldn't snap, wouldn't make good connection. I'm going to flip this thing back over and give it another try, but I just thought I'd show you that. Well, I turned it on and still no audio out of it. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out why is there no audio coming out of this thing. So I flip it over to, let me spin this thing around just quickly. Flip it over, you know, it's on aux, and I grab the knob here and I take it to phono, FM, AM. Usually when you hit AM, you notice AM light is burnt out as well. I'll have to replace that, but yeah, phono auxiliary, tape 1, tape 2. None of these, I'm not getting any sound out. So I'm wondering what the heck's going on here. And no matter what volume level I put it at, I finally got these buttons working just fine. But that's the main and primary secondary speaker button. Still not getting anything. Oh yeah, by the way, you can see I just used an electrical connection here for that. Let me turn this thing off while I spin it around. Trying to figure out what's wrong, and then all of a sudden I notice here. You'll notice on the back of the Marantz, they have, and every Marantz is like this, they have a main in and a pre-out. And what this does is let you take right here and go to use this unit basically as a preamp and go out to a different amplifier. Or you could use a different preamp per se and feed it in to this main in right here and just use the amplifier section in this. Or you can do this. You can jumper from here to here and here to here, and it completes the connection inside of this unit, and all of a sudden the preamp in this unit feeds the amplifier in this unit and you get sound. So let me show you what that looks like. This is the little unit. These are Marantz jumpers. And what they do is they simply slide into these two slots just like that. And then when you have the unit on, let me get it on auxiliary. Come back around. Welcome back. Another part in the Marantz 2250B repair. So if you'll remember earlier, we had an issue with power switch and still waiting on that thing to come in. But in the meantime, I started, I kind of bypassed the power switch, went direct, and just checking this thing out a little more. And what I noticed was when I turned it on, I would, I put something into the auxiliary ports back here, right here, and wasn't getting any sound out of the speakers. So scratching my head on that and played around for a few minutes, and I ended up pulling the two, you'll see these jumpers on the back. One goes to the pre-in and one goes to the pre-out. What these are, Marantz did this on most of their units. What they do is from the driver section of the amp, which is usually mounted up in here, between it and the output sections, which is usually this is the right one here, and this one's the left one down here. They power output modules. They actually put a bridge in there. It's right here, these jacks. So what happens is your signal comes in, basically goes through the volume knob, goes through the tone controls, comes out the back side of that, goes into the driver board itself, comes out of the driver board, and then that's when it feeds to these power amplifiers. But between all of that and the power amplifiers, they put a set of jumpers. And what that enables you to do is, if you remove the jumpers, one, you can use the front end of the amp here and go out the pre-out on these and simply feed into another amplifier. Let's say you had a great big some type of amplifier crail or something really big, a lot of power. So you could use the preamp, the phono stage, the AM FM out of this to feed another great big amp. Or you could do the opposite. You could actually come from another preamp and feed into the pre-in here and just use the output sections of this to power into your speakers. So when you remove these jumpers, you basically don't get any sound from the front to the back. So what I did was I took these jumpers off the back, and first thing I did was took my handy dandy little iPhone or iPad Nano here, and iPod Nano, and the RCA jacks coming out the other side of it, and I went into the pre-in right here and started playing music. And guess what? This power section here and this power section here sounded perfect. So feeding directly in at line level into the two amplifier sections, it played great. So then what I did was I took a cable, and when it came out of the pre-outs here, and I ran it across the room to the other side of the room here, where I have an amplifier hooked up and a set of speakers. And what did I find? Nothing was coming out of the preamp section. So that helped me isolate this unit down to, I've got a problem with the preamp, or potentially the wiring to the preamp, or something in the volume control, or one of the tone controls. But somewhere on the front end of this amp, basically, we got issues. So if you'll notice, this little preamp board right here mounts, goes through the chassis here, and it has tone controls built onto it. But this is a combined tone control board and preamp board, and that's just kind of the way it's done here on the Marantz 2250B. Some of the higher end Marantzes, 2270, 2265, 2275, and on up. This tone control stuff is usually separate from the driver board, and there's usually mounted right along in here is the actual driver board. This right here is the phono board. So every bit of that is designed to drive the phono stage in this unit, and then usually sitting above it is the driver board, and then this other stuff's separate. But this one has a combined board, and let me show you what I found was wrong when I pulled it out. This resistor right here, if you notice anything funny about it, get this back here in the light actually a little bit. It's pretty fried, brown, burning too basically, and behind it you can see it burned up this Mylar capacitor or poly capacitor behind it. I don't know that it actually hurt the capacitor, but it burned the outside surface. So I've been going through a process here of basically, let me show you. Back over here on the schematic itself, if I notice that pin 4 comes in on this connector, and I'll show you that in a second, kind of comes in, and what it connects to here is this RE73 right here, or excuse me, pin 5 connects to RE73 right here, and RE73 is that 100 ohm resistor that's burned up. So I've just kind of been going around, tracing various things here, seeing where they connect, looking for potential items that could have shorted and caused this to burn up, because resistors usually don't burn up on their own. Something, a capacitor somewhere is shorted or something. So kind of been tracing through the schematic. Sorry about the breaks in the video. I'm just trying to keep you from getting motion sickness as I swing around the room back and forth. One day I'll show you my setup, but my PC's behind me. I've kind of got this U-shaped setup where I've got a bench and then a credenza and then basically my desk and monitor and whatnot, and it makes a neat little workshop. But at any rate, I got to trace along and come over here on the other side and kind of figure out what's got this thing going. I noticed one thing here. There's a piece of copper wire soldered right here, and I bet $100 that was not that way from the factory. So somebody has been inside this board before, which is not always my favorite anytime I get into a unit, and somebody else has been working on it and it still doesn't work. Scares me a little, but we will figure it out one way or another. I'm going to do a little bit of troubleshooting. As I start to find things, I'll come back around to you. Alright, I'm going to show you a couple things I've done since the last section. First and foremost, I went through and I replaced all these caps here on this board relative to the section here where I know the problem is at. What I ended up finding was, as you traced each of these inputs coming from this little jack that plugs into it, it's really easy to tell that the first one here, see the blue connection, blue wire coming down? Well, that blue wire, if you notice the way that thing's wrapped, there's 3 wires inside of it. Pink wire, black wire, white wire. Black wire is ground, left and right, and what those are, that's the audio feeding into this preamp unit. So what I've done is basically, and then you got another black and a red, which was power to this thing, and then just some other connections. So what I did was I started tracing, basically using just an old fluke meter that I have set up. I set the unit on continuity, so when the 2 ends touch, it kind of beeps. I had one end set up with a little clip thing, and then the other end set up with a little touch probe, and you can see when I touch them they beep. And what I started doing was just coming over here and kind of going, tracing the power input here and going through and chasing the audio input signals and chasing them through, just seeing if anything was shorted or whatnot. What I found when I got over here to this side, this strip and this little strip here, and if you'll notice what they really are, the input comes in here on pin 1 and pin 3 from the audio signal standpoint, and it basically feeds over and comes through this coupling cap on both of these for the output. And so what you basically have here, feeding from that, you got power coming in here across this resistor, and if you remember, this resistor was all burnt up. And then we have here 2 audio chips. It's little audio integrated circuit preamp chips that were in this thing, and I'll show you here. They were marked BA317, as you can see there. And what I ended up doing was, what I found was when I would test from one lead or the other down here, to these pins on the other side here, I didn't get what I would call balanced results. In other words, I'd clip here and I'd come over here and I'd start testing one pin at a time. Similarly, click the third one, come over here and test one at a time. And what I found was I had continuity on some pins that I didn't have on others, on the other side. And then I did a similar thing. I went to the middle one, which was ground, and I came over here and I started touching on these and touching on these. And what I found was that I didn't have equal, what I call balanced here between these two either. Some, like on this one I had a short on pin 2, which should be, but I also had a short on another pin over here. But on this one I didn't. So I knew something was up here between these two circuits. So the first thing I did then was I wanted to go around those things because replacing those things are kind of a pain. I didn't have them in my spare kit per se of new parts. So I replaced these two capacitors, checked all the resistors around it, make sure nothing was shorted. And lo and behold, never did find anything. So what I ended up doing was basically pulling this chip here, took it out. By the time I got it out, the pins were kind of all messed up. I put a brand new one in. What I put in was a replacement that I looked up online. It's an NTE 1433 integrated circuit audio preamp. About $5 or $6 for one of these things. So I ended up replacing this one and put the unit, kind of took it back over here, plugged it in, hooked everything up, turned it on, and still nothing. It was kind of killing everything. So I was starting to wonder, why am I not getting audio out of one channel but audio out of the other? Because a lot of times that's what you'll have. You start getting into dissecting chips like this, and you wonder, well, why isn't one working and the other not? Because the likelihood of both of these being dead is pretty slim. But what I found out was one of these was shorted, and it wasn't this one. When I put it back in, it gave me the same results. But this one here, when I pulled it out and replaced it with a new one, it had shorted on the inside, and what it was actually doing was killing the power for both of these. So it was keeping any audio from actually being able to be reproduced. But let me show you what happened. I've put this back in. I still want to replace this resistor here. You can see it's got some burn to it. Let me do it real quick, and then we'll put this back in there and show you the results. As you can see here, I just grabbed a little pack of 100-watt resistors I've had, and put the just kind of bend it over and put it into the standoffs. The purpose for these standoffs is really to keep this resistor off the board, where it goes right down here, where it'll tell you RA73. The reason for that is this is basically a voltage dropping resistor. It's taking the power input and dropping some voltage coming into these power chips. So it's designed to dissipate a little bit of heat per se. Let me get this soldered back in. Okay, it's been soldered back in now. Yeah, this other resistor had a little bit of charring on it from this, but I pulled it and checked it earlier, and it's fine. It just a little bit of the outer cover had gotten hot from this thing. So all in all, this thing is back in good shape. If you remember, it is the tone control / preamplifier board, kind of all consolidated into one here. I'm going to plug it back in and show you how it works. Alright, before I do that, I want to show you something. If you'll notice up in here, the red wire you saw before and the black and the orange wire here that I had kind of twisted together with a electrical twist connection. I've now soldered those onto a new switch on this side, and if you'll notice on the other side here, all I had to do was put the two screws in to hold it, and with this I now have a power switch. That's all it took to kind of replace that power switch. So at any rate, let's do this. Let's turn the power on. And wait a second, you hear the protection relay kick in there. And all of a sudden, we have lots of noise. Both channels. However, listen to this. Lots of crackling right there. We're going to clean this switch. It's definitely dirty. You could hear the crackling. Alright. We use just a little bit of deoxit D5 here, sprayed into the openings on the back of both of these. Ran it back and forth, and lo and behold, no more crackling. It's a great sign. If you'll notice here, I'm going to turn this off for a second. You notice here, I've not mounted this board back yet. I've just kind of got it hanging here. I stuck a piece of packaging in behind it, just to keep the traces on the back or any of the connections from touching anything. But what it kept me from doing was mounting this thing back inside the unit, then turn around and testing, having to pull it back out and whatnot. But I'm happy with the results at this point. You know, I've basically got this board recapped. We've checked all the transistors here. They all seem to be good. We've replaced both audio preamp chips. You know, I could have pulled this one chip back out and put the original back in it, but it was just too difficult, I think, of a task. You have to, I tell you, with these things flipped over, let me show you here real quick. You know, you basically end up with a soldering gun, having to touch each one of these little places, and then you have to use a solder sucker, something like one of these, and pull out the solder on each and every one of those. And even when you do that, you don't get it all. So you end up sitting here with a pair of pliers like this hooked on the other side to the actual chip, and you end up with the soldering iron on this side, kind of touching little spots to heat them up, and kind of wiggling on the other side to break that thing out. It's kind of like as a kid pulling a tooth, you have to wiggle it. Similar stories. It's about a 10-minute ordeal on each one of these. So once I'd put the replacement in here, I certainly wasn't going to turn around and go back through. And you notice these things look kind of gunky around them. Well, what that is the rosin from the soldering. They make some stuff you can brush on here, kind of rosin remover. Then you grab a toothbrush and kind of scrub it a little bit, and it'll all clean up nice and neat and whatnot. But it's more for cosmetics than anything. I mean, you can see here it looks really good from a solder connection standpoint, and it's all held well together. You just see the crud of the residue from the rosin inside the solder. Still didn't figure out why that was done, but certainly this thing had been worked on before. Anyway, I'm going to flip this thing back over, get it back in the unit, and then we're going to show you how to bias this thing. How about that? Alright, in the middle of mounting this thing back in here, and I want to show you something. If you notice this paper right here, all along the edge, it's just a thin little piece of almost construction paper here. I just wanted you to know it is important. If you can see here, there's a lot of traces right along the edge, and what that's doing is insulating between this chassis and this board. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. It would have been easy to push this board on top of it and kind of push it out of the way, but just wanted to let you be aware of that. Alright, I always like to do one more check here. Let's turn this thing on. Left channel, right channel, working in the middle. The tone knobs seem to move okay. Let me flip this thing over now that it's all mounted in here. I just wanted to show you how this thing, let me turn that down. Show you how this thing was actually mounted in here. You can see here it's kind of in the middle. Down here on this end you got the phono amp. And up here you got the volume knob. Kind of got the combo tone board and preamp here. And then over here you got the electrolytic power supply capacitors, the great big ones. This big block right here is the rectifier, voltage rectifier. It's what the AC comes into and starts converting it to DC. And then these two big capacitors here take the ripple off of that. It's kind of a full wave rectifier setup. And you can see the bottom here of the right channel amplifier and the bottom of the left channel amplifier. And then kind of here on the back you got all the input jacks or whatever. And this down here is the selector switch that switches between auxiliary, phono, and all those types of things. So just to orient you a little bit as to how this thing looks from the bottom. I'll flip it over and show you a couple things. Alright, I want to show you something. It might be really difficult to see. I'm going to home in on it. And this could have something to do with the issue, what caused it originally, but I'm not sure. You'll see the feet on this thing, okay? If you'll notice the screw on the other side of these feet coming in, if I tighten these things all the way down the way they should be, watch what happens here. You see what just happened? The screw itself, I'm gonna pull it back out. The screw itself just hit the one of the wires on the headphone jack, basically shorting that part of the amplifier to ground. So I don't know whether somebody bought some new feet along the way for this thing and just found some screws they had laying around, but let me tell you, the screws for this thing here, way too long. They're going way up on the inside. And look down here on the other side. I haven't put the feet back in on it yet either, but it will do the exact same thing on this side. So my gut tells me somebody's replaced the feet on this thing at some point and just grabbed whatever screws they had, but those are way too long. I'm gonna have to go find some shorter ones that just barely go through this metal on the other side. I noticed that the other day when I was taking out the power switch, and thought, whoa, that screw's hitting the headphone jack. But I got to fix it. Very well, that short on either side here could have been what was, because on this side, if you notice, there's two other jacks, which kind of go to the tape in and out, or dub in and out. Anyway, let me go see if I can find some shorter screws than that and get this thing fixed. Alright, we're over in the other room. I keep a couple bins laying around with new bolts and nuts and miscellaneous used bolts, nuts, and screws. But, you know, in here I keep a lot of stuff. Most of the stuff I pick up at Lowe's Hardware, places like that. Just different size nut washers and screws and bolts and whatnot. But check this out. I picked these up at some point. You know why? Because these are the things that fit the bottom of the Marantz units perfectly. And when I found the right size, I went ahead and bought a great big bag of them. So I just wanted you to know that I keep those things in stock, because a lot of times the Marantz units, when you get them, they're missing their feet, or one of them's broke or whatnot, and I'll order new ones. Some of the times they come with screws, sometimes they don't. When they don't, I need the screws. But anyway, I'm going to grab a couple of these. If you'll notice here, they're significantly shorter in length, but yet the same thread count. Significantly shorter than the other. I'm going to go get these put on. There we go. Just thought I'd show you the difference. Got one laid out there with the good screw, the right kind of screw, and one with the extremely long screw, causing the grounding or shorting issue. Now if you'll look up in there, see the new screw coming through the metal, and it's a good maybe a quarter inch or more away from the headphone jack terminal. Same thing down here on the bottom. You can see where it comes through there. Barely. It's hard to get any light in there. Anyway, I can tell you that it's not touching anything, but that was the goal. As you can hear in the background now, we have a nice 1 kilohertz tone playing. I'm going to kill this power for a second to show you a couple things. Well, let me turn it back on and kill the volume. Okay. First thing I always do when I get one of these is I check. I go through all the If you'll notice, it's on tape 2 right now. On tape 1, it's on auxiliary, phono, FM. You can hear the, I'm not getting any stations down here in the basement. I can hear it crackling between what would be stations. There we go. Anyway, what I'm making sure is that these things light up. If you'll notice now, AM did not light up. And then the other thing I've got to do is I've got to hook an external antenna, FM antenna up to make sure that we can get the Dolby light to light up here. But right now I know the AM lights burn out. And here's the other thing. When you put it on aux, the stereo light here, unless you've got the FM, the mute button over here pushed, stereo light should come on. So I know right now the AM bulb is burnt out, the stereo bulb is burnt out, and I got to check this Dolby bulb. As well as, if you'll notice how it's kind of blue here in the middle, but not blue on this end and not blue on this end. Typically there's about 4 or 5 bulbs in behind this, and I'm gonna get in there and pull them out. I did have a conversation with the owner of this unit here a couple days ago around what he wanted to do. You know, because this is where it gets interesting. You can invest a lot or a little right now, and I'll give you a couple examples. So in behind this these letters on the other side is this paper, and it's called vellum paper. And it's really just a white, almost like construction paper, but it's more translucent than that. And what it does is it lets it's basically a light diffuser. When the bulbs hit it, so you don't see these bright spots of light, they hit the vellum and it kind of spreads out the light, and so you get an equal, nice spreading of the colors across the dial here. So you can replace the vellum. Typically by this point in time, these things have aged and they're yellow. Similarly, in behind these, and oh yeah, by the way, if you'll notice, there's no lights lit up in behind this. So I know I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bulbs right now to replace. I could replace the vellum. That's a pretty tedious thing. Takes a little bit of time. You know, it can make things a little brighter. I usually kind of, here's what I like to do. I like to put the bulbs in it first, and then kind of look at it, and then determine whether I want to go to the effort of putting the vellum in it. So if you're going to do the vellum, you got to pull the faceplate off here. If you're not going to do the vellum, you can get to the bulbs from behind and replace them. So I'll replace the bulbs, see what it looks like. If I think it needs it, I'll replace the vellum. If not, I won't. Similarly, these bulbs in the back here, I could replace with standard bulbs, or I could replace with modern LED replacements. So let me show you those. Sooner or later, you'll realize I have a little bin for everything. At any rate, this is your standard Marantz 8-volt clear bulb that goes in behind. They look like a fuse, but they're not. If you kind of lay them down, you can see here on the inside maybe that they're actually little bitty bulbs. They're just in the shape of a fuse, and there's several of them that snap into some holders along here. A little difficult to get to, but not too bad. But you want to make sure you're running with the 8-volt, either 200, 250 milliamp. That's what would have came in this unit from the factory. However, so they make these. So what they are, if you'll notice, they're in a little fuse holder, but they're 3 little miniature LEDs mounted on a PC board in between. So these are 8-volt Marantz. If you notice, it's marked clear. These give off a bright, clear light. If you notice on the other side, these say 8-volt LED Marantz, but these are kind of hard to read there, but they say blue. These give off a bright blue light. There's just a lot of debate out there as to whether to go with the clear, the blue, or the original clear. Here's the logic I use. If you're going to keep this thing forever, and it's going to be your unit to listen to. Go ahead and do the LEDs. These things are $3 or $4 a piece, where these are, you know, maybe $1 a piece. These will last forever, basically. These will need replaced again at some point. So that kind of gives you the, you know, if you're going to sell this thing, or maybe not use it as your primary unit, or it's not going to be on all that much, I'd go with these. If you're going to hang on to it forever, go with these. Then you just got the debate between the blue or the clear. And I'd encourage you to go on eBay and look at units that just pull up Marantz, stereo, receiver, and just start looking at ones people have sold on there. You can tell the difference between the ones where they use the blue LEDs and the clear. The blue, man, some people think it's just too blue. You get this bright blue glow kind of coming all in behind, and some people think it's just too much. So it's kind of a personal preference thing. Sometimes I'll run into customers who say they want the blue LEDs. Other times I get them wanting the clear. And in this case, I don't think this guy's going to use this as his primary unit, or hang on to it forever. So we just discussed going with the regular clear bulbs here as what we're going to do in this one. One more thing to note, I failed to mention. If you are going to do, now let me tell you why it's much cheaper to do the regular bulbs. Because right here I might just have to replace 2 or 3 bulbs, but if you're going to go LED, you need to replace them all. So you need to pull out the even the ones that are working in the back here. Otherwise you get this imbalance of brighter over here and not as bright, and much brighter over here. You want to get consistency going across the back of these things. Alright, to change these bulbs, I'm going to show you what's coming off. This little screw right here, and down here there'll be another little screw, and basically this black thing will come off right here. It's just a kind of a light guard or something here, and I'll show you after that. Up next, what we're going to pull, this is the actual dial indicator light. As you can see, it'll kind of come back a little bit here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off of the end of this, the little, it's hard to do one-handed, but I'm going to take that off. It gives me some slack to pull this thing back. And I'll tell you, before you do that, pay a lot of attention. Maybe take pictures to how this wire, how this cable gets wrapped around the tuner section here, how it goes down and goes around the knob that you spin that adjusts the dial indicator. But I've worked on so many of these, I know exactly how they go, so I just reached over there and did that. But I would highly recommend you pay a lot of attention before you do what I did, so you can get it back to where it was. Alright, up next, this screw right here and this screw right here with the metal on them. Going to be 2 of them that I go after next, and this one right here, this one right down here with the plastic on it. I'll show you what happens. And one more thing, sometimes I have to unsolder some wires here to actually get the backs off. You can also pull the whole faceplate and pull this thing from the front, but I'm doing a little bit of a shortcut. Alright, I'm going to show you something else. I've kind of got this top one pulled out in the back here, and you can see the actual bulbs themselves here. And what I'm going to do, I learned this trick a long time ago through trial and error. But you got these pins on the back, so like these 2 pins right here. This is the 2 pins that get power to it that light up this little bulb, and these 2 go to this bulb and this one, and looks like it's kind of missing one there, but you get the picture. What I'm going to do is up here I've got a power supply, and I basically got this thing set at about the same voltage, and coming out of that I've got 2 little test leads here. So got it turned on, and what I'm going to do is come down here and basically see if that bulb will light up that wasn't lighting up before. I'm going to set the phone down to do that, but you get the gist of what I'm doing. Alright, let me see if I can do this and show you. These things share a common ground. Matter of fact, there's a black wire going down. At any rate, see what happens here? That bulb is good. That bulb is not. If you remember, that one was labeled AM, and we noticed it didn't come on earlier. This bulb here comes on, which is good. It's the FM, which we knew earlier. Phono comes on. Let's see here. Let me touch down in here. And we get aux on. Got this one on, but whoop, guess what? This last one did not come on, and it's been replaced before. If you'll notice here, the blue little blue holder on it. Anyway, so I know I've got a couple of them dead. This first one and this second one right here are the two dead ones that I've got going on right now. Alright, and these are the units that go back in. 8 volt, 40 milliamp Marantz, and what they call them is little bi-pin connectors, but you can see what they look like new here. I think there's one used one in the bag, but basically it doesn't matter which connection goes on what. It's kind of like a Christmas tree bulb. It doesn't matter which way it goes in, but I've actually got to unsolder this one and this one down here. Pull them both out, put 2 new ones in, and see if we can get them all to light up again. Oh, one thing to note, when I was connecting this thing and feeding power into all this, I did make sure this thing's turned off, so I'm not competing with the power supply inside of it per se. Tell you, I wish I had 3 hands, but basically here's the gist of it. Hold the unit on one side with your left hand. Kind of get your soldering iron tip. Come from the other side, and you kind of start touching both leads back and forth till they get pretty hot down in here. And you continue pulling on the left till it comes out. Then you turn around and get another unit, put it back in there, and do the same thing. Start pushing it through the holes while you kind of go back and forth. Keep both holes hot. When you're all said and done, you want to make sure there's no solder, that you haven't bridged a gap between the 2 connections there from a solder standpoint. And then the last thing I did when I got done was I'll show you here. Well, it would help if I left my thing turned on, but as you can see, we got light. Did not have that before. Alright. Wasn't wanting to go down this path, but I ended up having to. So as you can see, I pulled the front faceplate off. And if you'll notice a little of the vellum paper, you see this stuff here. It's just a really thin coating of looks kind of like construction paper, but I'll tell you a secret. Let me go get some and I'll show you. Alright, another episode of Blue Glow Electronics Mythbusters. If you remember, I showed you, well, you haven't even seen that yet. I'm showing you in another video. It hasn't been published yet, but I'm going to myth bust some fancy snake oil for turntables, but when I get it published. Anyway, so this will be my first Mythbusters. Let me show you here. You come on here and what do you find? High quality vellum paper from Marantz receivers. You're basically going to get 3 little pieces of paper for $14. There's some others here for $6.72, but they don't have the cutouts. But at any rate, people on eBay sell this stuff all the time, and it's not exactly cheap. Let me show you what I did. All right, I keep this stuff stored in these binders. But if you'll notice when I unbind this, what I have here is, let me get the other side unbound. Sorry about that. Get your motion sickness again. At any rate, check it out. We have beautiful sheets. You can see going up here into the lighting. By the way, I love these LED lights that I use under my bench. That's what we've got. We've got vellum paper. You see my fingers through it. See how translucent it is. At any rate, 100 sheets of this cost me $14. Found it on Etsy, craft site. They use this for scrapbooking. And what someone on eBay has done is gotten smart, cut out some pieces, put it on eBay for $14 a piece, and gee, let's think, if they did that times 100, that'd be $1,400 they'd make off of this stack of paper that I bought for, I think it was $16 and something plus shipping. At any rate, I just thought I would show you that little secret and do a little bit of Mythbusters on the eBayers. At any rate, you can see back in here, these are the fuse style bulbs that you can kind of pop out and replace now. And I'll end up gluing new paper in and kind of cleaning all this off and getting this thing put back on properly here. But I'm gonna turn it on and show you the bulbs here. Hang on one second. All right. Do you see what I was talking about earlier? You got one bulb here in the middle burning. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 that are out. So I'm going to end up replacing these 4, and then we'll show you what it looks like. Alright, I thought I'd show you something. So that's a new bulb. That's a new bulb. That was the original factory bulb. This is what the LEDs look like, the blue ones. And this is what the clear LEDs look like. I just thought I'd give you a side-by-side comparison of how they look in an amp. And when you kind of get this back up over here, you can kind of see the difference here on how bright and blue this is in here versus here and whatnot. I don't have the diffuser in there, but you can kind of tell a difference just in the hue of it. This is kind of a bright, blow you away blue, and this is more of a greenish blue or whatnot. Anyway, another thing I thought I would mention while I was at it was that the reason I went ahead and came to the front, I was struggling with getting to them from the back. Some receivers, there's enough space in here between the tuner, and you don't have this FM MPX unit here, so I was not having that luck with this one, so changing them from the back. So I went ahead and did it, I guess you'd call it the right way, and moved around to the front. But I'm going to swap these two back out. I just thought I'd show you what they look like. Okay, now coming over here to the meter unit. If you'll notice, there's 2 screws, and I've already taken them out. There's one right here. Get the focus clear. One right here. I've already taken both those screws out, laying them right down here. And what happens is this bottom piece kind of pulls out, and you can actually then get to the bulbs. Similar thing. They pull out just like a fuse on both sides. End up getting two new ones out of the bag here. And you snap them back in, just like so. And put those back underneath. I'll be right back. And we're back. So all I did was basically snap that back in there, put the 2 screws back in it, turn around, turn it on. Look, we've got bright blue, and we've got 5 lights there. Let me cut a piece of vellum to match over this thing, clean off a little bit of this leftover from last time. Get that put back in here, get this in there, clean this real good, and put it back in there and glue it back in. And we'll be right back. Let me show you what I did here. Basically laid this thing down across the piece of paper, vellum, kind of cut it. It's almost the same length. You have to cut a little bit off. Check out the difference. This is the original yellow vellum. This is kind of the new translucent stuff. You can see right through it. See my scissors? You know, this stuff's getting kind of dark and dingy. You can barely see through it. I'll show you back around over here though. I've actually cut a piece and put it in here. Use just a tad bit of contact cement around the edges basically. But ta-da! And you can still see the bulbs behind it, but it's really diffused at this point. Let me show you what it looks like with the faceplate on it. Alright. Might even turn the lights off in the room here for you. Hang on one second. Show you how this thing looks. Alright, nice and blue dials down here on the end of the meters. And dials lit up nice, beautiful blue all the way across, nice and clean. You know, there's no real bright spots or whatnot. Got the auxiliary lit up. Now we've got the stereo light lit up, which was not coming on earlier. I told you it should have been. Anyway, you have now witnessed basically what is done to relamp a Marantz unit. Two things I failed to mention a while ago when I took this faceplate off was I had to remove a screw here and a screw here, and this little black plate comes off, and it serves two purposes. One, it kind of pushes up against the dial and holds it in place. Two, it once this thing gets sealed with the faceplate on it, it's kind of the part of the enclosure. Same down here. It keeps the light in per se, or any other light out. There's two screws here, one here. So this little shield I had to take out and then put back in, as well as this bottom piece here. And then really what's left here, you know, is get that dial indicator back on here. But let me show you what I do here. You'll notice this little guide here. I always wipe it off really good. It usually has grease on it. And I'll just use a paper towel. And I'll clean along this rim really well that the dial indicator slides across. Because usually what happens over time, those things start getting really gunky. And up here in my little container, I use some high-end super lube. It's a synthetic grease, basically PTFE grease. Comes in a little tube, and you use this stuff very sparingly. Show you what I'm talking about. I'll just run a slight little bead here, kind of along the edge, and then I'll use my fingers and I'll really spread it out. And the same thing along the top here. Just kind of getting this stuff all spread out here. You really don't want a ton of this stuff on here because it'll just sit around and collect dust, but just the ever little light. Sorry about that, my phone got full. Had to take some video off. Anyway, I finished smoothing a layer of grease all across this thing and all along the edge. And then basically the dial indicator just snaps back down on here. Except for one thing. If you'll notice, there is no light coming out of this thing. And normally there is. That's what this wire here is for. Comes back to this little connector that kind of swings back and forth real easily. Anyway, there's a light bulb inside of here that is burnt out. So I'm going to have to open this up and replace it. I'll show you how to do that. So the way this works is this thing basically has two little catches, one on each side of it, as you can see here. Lay it down here, one here, one here. And they catch over these little ticks here on both sides of this. So you have to use a little screwdriver and kind of get up underneath of it and pop one side, then the other side usually comes. And then if you'll notice in here, you kind of got the bulb and the shield. And let me get that out and I'll show you. All right. So it just kind of sits down in there. But if you'll notice here what you got a little shield, you got the bulb, and then if you'll slide this, might be kind of tight. Anyway, it's got a little bit of glue in there holding it in. Let me use both hands and I'll get this out. But basically, I'm taking the bulb out of this metal piece now. Wish I could invent 3 hands. I would be the best YouTube instructional video maker ever. Anyway, that bulb's dead, and if you'll notice, it comes back here and basically connects into this thing, then it goes down and comes back and plugs into the back of this board at 2 spots. Anyway, the way I do these is I splice it in the middle, so somewhere right along in here where it really doesn't matter on the back side, I'll splice this thing. So I'll show you what I do. Alright, I've got a new bulb laid out here. I have cut the ends on this one and this, and I basically stripped the ends and twisted them really good and tight. If you'll notice, I've slid 2 really small pieces of shrink wrap up on this a little bit, and what I'm going to end up doing is kind of straight for straight right here, just kind of solder these on one for one, and then we'll pull the heat shrink down, and once it's soldered, and we will use the heat gun. Be right back and show you. what I've done first is I've taken each one of these, and it's hard to see here, but basically I've tinned the wires. Got the soldering iron up against each wire, put just a little bit of this really thin gauge solder up against it, and basically tinned each wire. And I did it on all 4 of them. Did it on these and on that. That'll make it really easy for me to just touch these things together with the soldering iron and get them to stick. I've also got this thing, the wire held inside of this little jig too. It's just a little set of alligator hands to help you hold stuff. But that way when you're actually soldering this wire, you don't have 2 wires flopping all over the place. And we finished them up. Now if you'll notice, they're heat shrunk really tight here on these things. So, and I didn't use a whole bunch of heat shrink, and I used really small because I need to keep this thing lightweight. Because if it gets real heavy, it kind of gets in the way of the dial indicator moving back and forth real easily. But one thing to note, it doesn't matter which one goes to which. I know there's red and black, red and white wire here, but it doesn't matter. There's no polarity. It's DC light bulb, doesn't matter which way you plug it in. I'm going to go ahead and get this back inside this holder here, and then mount it back down inside of here and turn it on and see how things work. And you can now see we have a glowing dial indicator light. So when that goes down on and it's nighttime and you roll this thing across, it'll be nice and pretty going across it there. Anyway, now you're learning all the tricks. You can kind of see how I bent this to go upward a little bit, so it kind of avoids the edges here when it comes forward, back and forth. Let's see, what next? Oh yeah, we were going to bias this thing, weren't we? And show you how to do that. Be right back. Let me get set up for it. One more thing before I get into the biasing. So this is electronics lubricant, and what it's designed to do is lubricate bearings and bushings and things of that nature, yet still being safe on electronics and plastic and whatnot. So at any rate, what I do is I come down here and I get into this little thing here. I get onto the bushing, not where the string's at, and similar to down here below. And I'll just spray just a little bitty bit. Can I hear it? And I'll do similar like on these, just a little bit, and let it soak down in around the bearing there on that. I'll make sure not to get it on the strings, but I'll do that for each of those. And then if you'll notice, I've removed the cover off of the FM tuner section. And down inside here, you'll have similar parts. You'll have a gear or 2 here on the front end of this thing that need a little bit of lubrication, and the shaft on the back side, and then 2 places along the way in the middle here. And what that does is it gets your dial so you can about spin this thing really easy, just the way it came from the factory actually. And keeps the track path really easy to use, and no jumpiness, that type of thing. Be right back. Put the cover back on this and get ready for the biasing. Guys and gals, I think I've changed my mind. I'm gonna do the biasing on this unit, but I'm gonna make it a separate video. So if somebody's just wanting to know how to bias a Marantz 2250, they can watch this separate video and not have to watch the long repair that was done on this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up for now, and there'll be another video out there hopefully shortly after this one that's specific to biasing this unit. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you learned something. I know I did. Every time I work on something, I learn something new. And keep watching. We'll keep making them. Thanks again.